Hey everybody, I am trying to go back to vlogging an entire project again. It's been a while since I've done this, and this is a rather substantial piece. I think it's called the Forge God. I'm sure it'll be in the title properly. This is a Kingdom Death piece, and I think this is the largest resin piece I've done from Kingdom Death. So that'll be interesting. In general, their resin has been pretty nicely cast, but I figured what I'm gonna do first is look over the pieces and parts, and then I'm gonna have to do some cleanup. I'm sure I can already see there's a big carrier here. It was actually the little pour spout on the end of this hammer. The hammer itself looks to be very, very well cast, sharply cast. I don't see, aside from that, there's no, there's one. Okay, so more than likely what has happened is this went into the mold this way, and then it was cut diagonally and then just pushed out, so that leaves just the cut marks on either end of this to clean up, and that's it. So that should be fine. This is the base. That looks like that's going to go together fairly well. It's not perfect. I can just glue that, or if I needed that to fit better, I can add a little heat, either with my heat gun or with some hot water. But I don't think that's going to be necessary. I think that's going to work out just fine. I'll save the little pieces until last. The body looks pretty nice, actually. There's some little venting areas there that need to get cleaned up. Oh, there is a parting line there, so there. Oh, I assumed to find one on the other side, but I don't see it. So again, this is probably cast like this and sliced and then just pushed out. Okay. Leg. Vent right there. There's some flashing there. Otherwise it looks fine. Another leg. We got the carrier piece there. Otherwise this one looks really nice. Okay. The I don't know, whatever this is. Tentacle eye. Oh. It's got a fish. It's got a little doggy fish on there. Look at that. Isn't that cute? And a corresponding doggy fish. All right. Oh, and a big one. One big doggy fish. What a cute little poppers. I wasn't actually looking that closely at these pieces. Another little vent. Overall, these are really nice. These are really, really nicely cast. I don't know. At some point, I'm going to have to go in and look at the pictures of this piece again. Okay, there's a parting line there. I don't know if you can see it. It's very shallow. Shouldn't be a problem. Another vent. And okay, again, looks pretty good. Another vent. And thumbs up. That looks pretty good. I'm going to have to get in really close on these to find any issues, I think. And this is what holds the hammer. Oh, that fits super nice. Look at that. This has got a little bit of a curve to it. I can either leave it or try and straighten it with some heat, but it's not bad in any case. Oh, I'm really excited about how nicely that fits on there. And then let's have a look at the small pieces. I got to grab my magnifier for this. For me, not for you. Oh, good. I got paint on mine. Paint on it. All right. There we go. Right here. Right here. He looks pretty good. His feet are in a weird position, but I guess that's because he's going to be sitting on this rock somehow. And so his feet have to conform to that. Oop. All right. There we go. Why does this guy have a foot growing out of his ass? Oh, he's sitting cross-legged. Okay, you just can't really see the leg on the back. It just looks like he's got a foot growing out of there. But he looks fine. Just a little tiny bit of flashing. And he's got that thing growing out of his head. I thought that was a candle at first, but no, that's just a vent. That'll be a little challenge to keep that from deforming his head too badly. But otherwise, that looks okay. And then we've got a whole sprue of hands and arms. And these all look pretty good. All right. So first thing is this. And this is going to be the most challenging thing. And what I have discovered with these is that, there's two approaches you can take. And one is you can take a saw and try to trim that off. You can do that with a hand saw or with a rotary tool. Or you can take some clippers. And there you go. And then, if I can find my knife, you want to carefully trim that down in such a way as to not slice into your thumb. I do try to keep my thumb out of the line of fire there. It may not necessarily look like it from your perspective, but I have been doing this a long time. And sometimes I'm moving the part rather than moving the knife. And luckily this is a nice, a little bit soft resin. So it shaves up really nicely. That is going to require a little sanding and a little bit of putty to get that off of there. And the rest of this is going to be pretty quick, I think. mostly just shaving this off with a knife. I think I'll change out my blade to get it a little bit sharper. So why don't I go ahead and do all that, and then I'm going to do some just quick test fitting, and then primer. All right, so I'll be back. So I was looking at this, and this line here is a little bit more substantial than I thought it was. It's not bad, all things considered, but it's not as simple as, you know, running a knife across it, which is what I might normally do. And in fact, you can get some of the way through it with this. But what if I try to do the whole thing with that, I'm going to end up with this flat spot there that I don't want. So what I'm going to do is I've got this 320 grit 3M sandpaper, which has got a plastic backing to it, and it's really pliable. So I like to roll it up like so to create a little sanding tool. And so I can go a little broader on my passes and get a more organic, smooth finish than just what you would get, you know, with the flat edge of your knife. And that's not too bad. And I think that's gonna, it's already gone here. Again, this resin is really pretty nice to work with. Anyway, since that was a little bit more work than I thought it was going to be, I just thought I'd show you how I was going to approach that. Anyway, back to work. So as I clean these parts, I've just been doing some test fitting. And the first one was this arm, which fits pretty well. It's going to require a little bit of work to get rid of the seam. And I'm a little disappointed in the fact that this side of the arm seems to be shifted forward ever so slightly. But overall, not a big deal. This isn't a big deal. On the other hand, this side doesn't really want to fit at all. And I can't figure out exactly where the issue is, except maybe this little bit right here. So that's going to require a little bit more thought and effort. Here, let's try this. I can see a little piece that just doesn't really conform to the shape of the rest of the surrounding area. So what if I just remove some of that? And you can usually remove, you know, like from the inner part pretty safely, because all you're worried about is this outer part here matching up nicely. So with that, you know, that's still pretty bad. It doesn't want to go. It doesn't want to. I don't know. I don't know exactly what is going on there. I might want to take this off in here. Let's do that. Nothing bad will happen from that, right? This is all just about figuring out, you know, where what's taking up space that it shouldn't be. Oh, that may have done it. Oh, it's better, but no, it's not actually. Well, okay. I'm still seeing this as being a problem. I'm just carving away more of that interior, hoping that I'll hit whatever the problem is. This may just be a case of the mold was slightly deformed, and therefore the two pieces are never going to interlock the way you want them to. It's just so kind of egregious. Yeah, I don't think there's any way. I think I'm going to have to wait, glue this down, and then do some carving from the outside, which is not what I want to do. But you can see, look, if I make this conform as much as possible on the front, when I flip it to the back, you can see that big lip there. And that tells me that one of these had a misshapen mold, you know, like where maybe it was just bulging out a little bit. So that's going to require more work when I get there, once this gets glued together. Anyway, back to work. Okay, a bit of quick advice. You see how this has this sort of ribbed texture to it? Well, I found a parting line right here, and this tool is like a diamond file, and this is just the kind of needle shape. These are perfect for getting in and sanding down those little channels. And you just sort of, you know, push your way through the line, and it will go away in pretty short order. And then if there's a line remaining on the upper edge, you can file it off this way or use your sandpaper or whatever. But this tool right here, this little file, I have a whole bunch of these in different shapes and sizes, and they're great for things like this, but this little round needly one is perfect for pushing through little channels like that. All right, be back. So something I discovered while sanding the hammer here is that there are some voids in the resin, just little air bubbles, little air pockets. And so I'm actually making them a little bit bigger before I fill them in, because it's just going to be easier to do. And then if I can find it, where is it? Somewhere over here, I have some plastic putty from Vallejo, and I have found this to be pretty good for filling little holes like this. Assuming I can get it to come out of there. Oh, hold on. Had to run a little wire down that. All right. You kind of want to make sure you get it inside, or else the moment you sand it, you're going to have a hole again. Sometimes I'll do this kind of stuff with super glue, but with a hole that big, oh, there's another one. Oh, no, there's not. Okay. With a hole that big, it's not always gonna work properly. Come on, get in there. Almost. Dang it. All right, I think we're good there. Going to let that dry. And I'm going to continue on with the other work I'm doing here. All right, so something else I just did that I thought I would share is there's a pin, square like a peg, that corresponds to the hole here. And remember how I said this kind of fit pretty good, but not great? Well, I figured if I remove that pin, it might fit better, and I was right. It didn't improve it a ton, but enough. You know what I mean? With a pin in, there was much more of a pronounced lip on one end, and now it's mostly gone. I'm still going to need to do some work, but I'll glue that together now and let it set, and then I'll have a better sense of the work I've got to do there. All right, I went ahead and glued in the arm, and the right arm, pretty nice. I dropped in some extra super glue in there to act as filler, and then I'll go in and sand that, and I think for the most part that's all that's going to need. Looks pretty good. Left arm, not so much. This was as good as I could get it, and look at that. At that heinous bit right here. That is tremendous. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and there's also a big gap here. I'm going to drop in some super glue around this like I did on the other side, and that'll take care of a lot of the not so egregious parts. But this is going to require some thought and I think really resculpting. And I think what I'm going to end up doing is carving some of this out with a knife and sanding it with files, sanding it with sandpaper, you know, doing some more filling, maybe get some of the sculpting putty out to blend it back in. But that's really bad. That is, if I were a less skilled model builder, I'd be really mad about that. As it is, I'm annoyed by this simply because that shouldn't be this bad. But I can work with it. So there's that. I'll let you know how it goes. Okay, got another tool recommendation for you here. I've gotten to the puttying part of this operation, and as you can see, it's come out rather well. Not quite done, but this is what I use to smooth my epoxy putty. This is a shaper, is what they call these, a silicone shaper. And these are kind of like oil brushes. I'm not entirely sure what their use is in oil painting, but You get them in different shapes and sizes. These are little ones that I found somewhere. I don't know where. And these little silicone heads are great. You just wet them and use them to smooth your putty, and it just blends everything out like magic. It's so nice. And you know, if you need to get some more definition, you just press a little harder and then blend out. And they work so nice. And so, like I said, this is turning out a lot better than I'd expected. And I'm going to go ahead and do the other side as well, since this is coming out so nice. The other side shouldn't take any time at all. I just want to make sure that I get all the muscle definition that is supposed to be there. And, you know, you don't have to try and do everything all at once. You can just keep going a little at a time until you get where you need to be. Anyway, back to it. All right, with the assembly all complete, I went back and took a little sandpaper and just cleaned up a few areas that just needed it. I went in and filled this gap with super glue and sanded that, so that's all set. And that's it. So at this point, I'm going to prime it with some Stynylrez black primer. Stynylrez, I've been using it pretty much since it came out, and it is still my favorite primer of all time. So that's where we are now. I'm going to get that started, and we'll talk about paint. So here is the Mini with the primer coat laid down. And this is the point at which you would check out all of your seams to make sure they look good. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. I can barely see the fills that I made. So that's nice. And the primer went down really nice, so it's ready to go. Here is the rock with the guys on it. And so what we're going to be doing as far as paint goes, and I think what I'm going to end up doing here is, I'm not going to show you necessarily me painting each and everything. I'll walk you through the steps. But this is going to be a more monotone Mini than I might normally do. The request was for something that looked a little, you know, like lit underground. So we're doing blue tones throughout. I may do something different with a hammer, but we'll get to that when we come to it. So it's just going to be a process of building up my colors one after the other until we finish up. And as with the primer, which I laid down with an airbrush, at least in these early stages, everything will be airbrush. So again, there's not going to be too much to show. So I'll get a step done, then I'll come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, first coat of paint. I used Warcolor's Blue 5 to get this dark blue. I wanted to get something that wasn't too rich. I didn't want to go, I'm not moving up into bright blue. I'm keeping this fairly gray. So blue, gray, but this seemed like a good place to start. And not much else to say at this point, except that, so the plan for the hammer is that this is going to get an orange glow centered on the faces. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. And we may do some some object source lighting from that onto this general area of the model. We'll see when we get there. That's far down the road though. So anyway, that's it for the moment. Moving on to next step. Okay, so the next color that I did was essentially just the same color, except I lightened it with a little white. Because I couldn't find anything in my collection that felt like where I wanted to go. And again, I was, like I said, I was going blue, but maybe blue gray, but I didn't want to go blue gray, too much gray. I wanted to keep some of that blue. I figured this was going to be the easiest way to do what I wanted to do. So that's where that went. And what I did was, I defined some of the details. I tried to focus on coming down from above, zenithal style, but not completely, because there's still some more steps to go here. I did go pretty just zenithal with the rock. The guys are going to kind of get their own treatment, but the rock, you can see, has a very directional spray to it. And I kind of, as I was doing it, I realized I'm going to want to add a little bit more color to this, but I want to keep it dark. And I think what I'm going to end up doing is adding some kind of lavender purple, like dark lavender purple, up from the bottom, just to kind of enrich in the color a little bit and give it a little bit more depth and a little bit more interest. But I'm really hoping that the contrast of the orange from the hammer, because that's going to be a real focal point, and it's going to be the real bright point too, but that's going to really bring your eye up and to, that part of the model. And I'm not sure how much brighter I'm going to go with the blue, but I am going to go a little bit brighter. And one of the things I haven't done yet that I'm still going to do, actually, I can show you the color because I still have some. There's the blue I used, because I have some on my palette over there. And because I'm going to dry brush some of the more fine details, like on here and here, very lightly dry brush, just because I need to pop those details out a little bit more, and it really wasn't possible to do that with the airbrush. So that's going to be my next step. So next step is dry brushing, and then maybe that purple, and we'll see where we go from there. All right, I'm really happy where this is going. I think I ended up doing more with the purple, and I ended up using a red purple instead of a lavender purple. I figured since we were going to be going orange with that sort of focal point, that it might be better to introduce some red into it more vigorously. So you're probably not going to see too much of a change here, but it's there, mostly in the shadows. Essentially, anything that was black before or really very dark blue got some of the red. I added it to, some of the muscle definition into the weird whatever the hell this is. The undersides of things, anything that didn't get very much of the light blue earlier, definitely got a lot of the red purple. Oh, and before I had done this, I also did the dry brush, which was very subtle, but it did what I wanted it to do, which is kind of pop out some of those details a little bit more. So happy enough with that. But very happy with where this stands at the moment. And I haven't figured out exactly where I want to go yet, because I can focus like on the guys on the rock, or I can focus on the god himself. For some reason, I'm leaning towards the guys, and I think I may do that. So you'll know in a moment. All right. So one of the challenges of doing what is essentially a monotone piece like this is that, well, differentiating your various areas of the model. And so what I've been doing, because what you're mostly doing instead of working with colors is you're working with brightness. But I also wanted to work with some colors as well. I really don't want it to be as monotone as it currently sits. So one of the things I've done down here on the base, I've done some dry brushing on the rock to really pick out the details and really make it look like a rock. But I've done that by mixing in some of this warm gray one into that blue that is something I would normally use on something like that. I mixed in some red into the blue. Here, let's pick that up on this. I don't know what this is. Whatever this is. Just to differentiate that color a little bit. And again, of course, I put some red purple in there into the shadow areas. And so I'm looking for ways like that, like this belt, to, create some color contrasts. So the whole thing doesn't just end up looking like one uniform mass. But I also am going to need to work with brightness a little bit more. And all of these things have just been because I've been looking at it and going, I don't really know. I'm in this weird stage where I don't necessarily like where it is. And that's okay. I know it's going to get better as things go on, but you kind of start getting antsy about it. I'm like, well, I need to start seeing it right now. And so that's why I'm playing with these other things. And I haven't, as you can see, I hadn't really chosen, this versus that. I kind of did a little bit of both. So I'm going to continue on and kind of figure out where I'm going. But I think one of the things I need to do is add some highlights to this guy on upper portions of like the heads and his leg and his arms and stuff. And really kind of bring out just a little bit more of that, brightness contrast instead of color contrast. So let me go work on that. So as you can see, I chose to focus on these guys for a bit. And what I've done is taken that same blue and mixed it with Flesh 3 to highlight, or to brighten that color, to do the highlights on them. And again, so it still ties together, but there's some differentiation of shade between the rock and the guys sitting on the rock. And yet you're still getting that monotone appearance that, there's not a lot of light here. So you're not getting a lot of color differentiation. And I think these guys have turned out quite well. This is one of those situations where, I'm not quite happy yet. Oh, I'm getting happier. This is good. And I haven't decided yet if I'm going to highlight more or not. And I think what's going to happen is I'm going to go to the Forge God and work on his highlights a little bit, put it all together, get an overall impression, and see where I need to apply some more. So let me go do that. I went ahead and decided to do some highlights on the Forge God using the same color that I highlighted these guys with. Because I figured it's probably fleshy. in tone, so there'd be some similarities, and because this is a very monotone piece, there wouldn't be that much differentiation in color. But as you can see, because these guys are so focused, like there's so much more of that color on them and not as much here, there's a weird differentiation between them that I didn't expect, but I probably should have. And I'm going to continue with this, doing some more highlighting, but I kind of wanted to show it where it was now, just as so you can see the process. I've also noted that this has become much darker in tone based on what everything else is doing at the moment, so that's going to need some work as well to kind of bring it back up. So we'll see where that goes, because I'm not going to do that quite yet. But I was kind of excited to see how this was turning out. Quite nice, actually. Anyway, I'm gonna jump back in, and I'll be back. As I was doing my highlighting, I realized I really needed to work with a different color. And in order to do that, I needed to start thinking about the hammer and how that was going to impact the rest of the model. So I have started with red 1 for more colors, which is a very orangey red. And I just put it straight over the blue on the hammer with the airbrush, focusing on the face as I intended to do. And now I'm thinking about how I want this placed on the model when it's done. And I think it's going to be something like this. Let's see if you can get that angle there. And so it's going to be a source for object source lighting. And that means that this whole area in here, sort of like under here up to his nose, under this, a little down here, maybe across to there, is all going to get some fall off from the orange glow. This isn't done, by the way. This is my first coat. Well, it's not really my first coat, but it's my first color. This is going to go more orange, maybe to yellow, in the most central portion of the face. But again, I wanted to start thinking about, because some of these other colors I'm going to use on the model. So I think, since I still have some of this red 1 in the airbrush, I'm going to start incorporating it into the God as well, so we get that really nice tie-in between the hammer and the figure. So I'm going to go work on that a little bit. I'll come back, show you how it's going. Okay, so that's just the first pass, just to get a sense of, if I felt like that was where I wanted to go. And I think that's looking pretty good. You can see I've got a little bit here, all over in here. Let me see if I can show you underneath here. So yeah, under here, it's dark, and that I actually probably need to brighten that up. Although I'd say it looks brighter in person than it does on the screen, at least as, from my looking at the screen here. But I am really liking that extra bit of color there. And I think what I'm going to do is work on this a little bit more, and then jump back to the hammerhead, and then go back and forth. So I'll be back. All right, so the next step was Orange 5. Now, Orange 5 I airbrushed directly onto the face and slightly outside of it, but the rest of the color out there is still just the red one. And so it's starting to create a real nice glowy hot spot. And I took that orange and I incorporated it in just a few spots on the body. But then I really brought it underneath. To really indicate that light coming up from underneath from the hammer. And that's probably the last of any of the other colors I'm going to add to him from the hammer. So the rest of this is just going to be the hammer. And I haven't decided exactly how far I'm going to take that. But I have a couple more oranges that I want to apply, focusing more and more on the center of the face there. So let's see how that goes. Focus. Oh, great. That's kind of funny. As soon as it focused, the color went away. Oh, white balance. You so crazy. Anyway. Yeah, so I'll be back. So some of you may have watched some of my previous videos of this kind in the past, and you know that there comes a point where I just start doing stuff and kind of bouncing around, and that's kind of where I am right now. So much so that I had to stop and focus on doing an update because otherwise I was going to completely forget the things that I've done. And as it is, I'm not entirely sure where I left off last, but let me talk about some things I have done. I added some yellow eyes to the face on the hammer just as a final pop for the glow. Did it on both sides, obviously. I added I went back to the original red one, and I just brought it down into the rock and onto these guys here. I mixed a little gold, and I've been using Liquitex iridescent rich gold with some of the blue, and adding that to so like this kind of belt buckly thing, I envisioned that as being gold. There's some chains around the ankles as well as these lanterns, and I've added a bit of gold into there. And then down at the base of the hammer, the kind of counterweight that's there, I added some gold into that as well. Oh, and he's got a bunch of rings on either hand and even a couple on his toes, and so I brought that into there as well. So overall it's coming along, and I'm just sort of, quickly again bouncing from thing to thing to thing, trying to move over the whole piece, and just, I don't know. This is that weird point where I'm just trying to bring it all together. I really like where it is right now, and I don't know where it has to go to be done. I honestly don't know yet. I do know that I want to do his eyes. I'm actually thinking that I'm going to do the eyes in a similar orange to the hammer. And I don't know if you hear those birds. It's really annoying. Apparently there's a nested pair of wrens near my house, my wife told me about, and they are super noisy. Anyway, This is, so eyes, yes. I was going to bring the orange into the eyes. So the eyes are going to have a similar, I don't know if it's going to be a glow, maybe just the color, maybe a bit of a light coming out of them. That wouldn't be bad. That would seem to make sense. But not as much as the hammer. The hammer really is the big focal point there. But the bringing the orange into the eyes will at least bring your eye to those faces as well. So, yeah, so I'm going to get to that. Okay, so I have been bouncing around even more, but also at this stage of the game, I mean, that's what you do, because you're looking around and seeing what you've missed and seeing what else you can do. And so let me show you something real quick here. He has lanterns on his feet. So I did those. And as you can see, I did some light fall off on this thing. The entrails, whatever those are. But I also had to do it on this guy here. I don't know. Ugh. Trying to get this to focus sometimes is kind of a pain. There we go. Well, the light is also the problem too. But anyway, there's since the foot is right next to his head, it was important to get that light going over there. I actually think I'm going to step away from this for a little bit. I've been looking at it for too long, and I don't know if it's done, and I don't know if I've missed something. So I'm going to take a break and think about it and come back and maybe take another stab at it. Okay, at this point, I think I'm going to call it done. I have gone back and added some more highlights, a little bit to the face here, some more orange glow down below, a little bit more through here again to just sort of add more contrast, a little more color. Harder to see right now, but I'm about to take it to go photograph it with my real camera, and so you'll be able to see what it looks like properly photographed with a nice background and everything's in focus. And I gotta say, doing this kind of project where you're working with a limited palette, I find it to be a lot harder than just painting things the way that you think they should look, where like this is supposed to be that color and this is supposed to be that color. When you're doing this sort of thing, it's just tough to go, am I done? I don't know if I'm done. And even now, as I look at it, I'm not feeling 100%. I really need to see the pictures with the camera to give me a better sense of it. But I think it's done. But I don't know. If you see more video after this, then I wasn't done. If you see the final photo with the music and everything else, then I was done. And that's how that works. And so there you go. That's how it works out. I like adjusting my my camera with the holder that I have. Anyway, I think that's going to do it. And probably the next thing you're going to see is cool photos. So I'll see you on the next one.